Not quite. One more minute.
1 minute to go.
Okay, good afternoon. We'll start. Welcome to the Bella Vista City Council work session for Monday, March 25th, 2 days short of St. Patrick's Day. So for those of you who have a twinge of Irish, top of the morning, and I hope you enjoy your day. Okay, as per usual, we're going to bounce around a bit on the agenda because we have some guests with us this evening. So I'm going to ask that we move to item number D for David, which is a resolution amending the 2020 city budget in the amount of $86,555.14 to provide for payment of bonuses to employees related to service during the COVID-19 pandemic during 2020 and providing qualifications for receipt. Glenda, I want to thank you for all of your efforts. You put a great deal into this, and I really appreciate it. Steve, this was yours to kick off in the first place a couple of months ago. So do you want to lead off on the discussion, please?
Sure, Mayor Christie and members of City Council. As we have discussed some in previous work sessions, wanted to kind of think in terms of how we apply some of the CARE Act that we got as an investment in our community. We are the second largest employer in Bella Vista. We've had first responders and other public facing members of city staff, all members of city staff who have had to work our way through 2020 and the pandemic crisis. And although these are very modest bonuses, they do reflect our appreciation, our recognition for the extra efforts and considerations that all city staff had to give during the pandemic. We want to show some appreciation. This represents less than 7% in total of the CARES Act funding that we received. And I do agree with the mayor that I started off kind of as a general idea. Hey, how do we recognize our first responders? Other members of city staff have spoken up for their teams who have had some hardships as well and have had to make adjustments on the fly. And so Glenda's recommendation, in fairness, was to bonus police officers at a $1,000 bonus, and all other members of city staff would be bonused at $500. And she did apply very specific precision to that, factoring down for people who might have been hired over the course of the year. So the highest bonus that anybody would get out of this is $1,000. Probably the most common bonus is going to be $500. And again, appreciate Glenda for applying a lot of precision in doing that. So I believe this is one way we can invest in Bella Vista, one way for us to recognize our employees, and it's something I'd like for all members of City Council to consider.
So just to give you a bit of flavor, the $86,555.14 is made up of actual bonus payout gross of $68,675. We then have three different figures, which are approximates because you never get it bang on. The first is LOP fee. I think everybody is familiar with LOP fee. That's the mandatory retirement fund for police and fire. We have a payroll tax. Sorry, LOP fee is just a little over $9,000. The payroll tax that we are obligated to pay is a little over $5,000. And then of course, we have the 457 match, which is a little over $3,300. So that brought it up to the $86,555.14. So Glenn, by if anybody has questions or anybody wants to comment on it, the floor is open.
Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, I'm sorry. Quick. So, you know, and what you were just explaining with LOP and everything. So, are payroll taxes taken out of that bonus?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And I'm just gonna say I think it's fair. I'm glad that it finally got to the point where you could take action on it So, I appreciate all the work everybody put into it. And I think it was a great idea at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Me too. Anybody else want to speak on the issue?
Well, I
Mayor?
just wanted to clarify one thing, and that is, we had some employees, mainly in fire and ambulance, that got bonuses in 2020. And this is not, if they got one in 2020, they don't get one this year. So it's not a double dip on the bonuses for those personnel. I just wanted to note that because it's not in the entirety of the workforce, and that's the reason why.
Thank you. That's true. Mr. Snow?
Is it possible to, for the city to pay that entire tax burden and so that the employees get the full 1,000, the full $500?
Glenda?
We could probably try to work on doing that. To me, there are some issues in that everybody has a different federal and state tax liability. And so if I choose to max out my taxes because I want a big refund in the end of the year, the city has a larger responsibility to make up the difference to get me to that 500 or the 1,000. That would be my only comment on that.
So to maybe phrase my question a little better, is it feasible to do such?
It is, yeah, it's feasible. We could go backwards from the 500 and calculate the taxes.
Would add approximately how much to that total amount?
I have no idea. We would have to take each individual check and have the system calculated one by one to know what the tax liability would be. The only thing we know for sure is Social Security tax. We don't know what federal or state would be.
Larry?
But we do have the withholding schedule for that employee that would be probably a suitable applicable case or not?
So yes, we could do it that way, but again, it wouldn't give each person necessarily the 500 because it's not manually calculated when we pay it through payroll.
Okay. So you'd need to manually calculate each of them to make it come out for the individual.
Yes,
What you're saying? Okay.
yes, and we could
Which-
do that.
Could I make a suggestion as an alternative to that? Because I know the complexities that go into trying to gross up an individual bonus,
Yes.
trying to gross it up to cover for taxes. If you feel like, the $1,000 is not the right number, then maybe you increase it to 1,200. And that way you're factoring in a little bit for taxes. Maybe the 500 goes to 650, maybe the 1,000 goes to 1,200. I don't want to get so bogged down in this so that we lose our momentum and our path forward. And I think grossing up, trying to figure out these complex payroll calculations is probably an effort that doesn't really pay off in the end. There's a smoother, easier way to do that if the majority of the council feels like the 1,000 and the 500 gross is not enough.
Understand, please, this is all manual. Larry?
I guess the more difficult part of that would be is if you said, let's round it to 12 and 650. If most of the employees would end up getting more than 1,000 net out of that, then it wouldn't be fair to the other folks. And so I'm inclined to maybe stick with what we have, given the complexity of calculating each employee's apportionate share.
I would agree.
One thing I will tell you that we will be doing is we will enter this as a separate check. So there will be the least amount of taxability possible that way instead of adding it onto their normal gross pay.
Yes.
Not only that, but it gives the employee recognition by that separate check.
Okay. Anything else? Good deal. Thanks.
I know my staff's gonna ask me how you decided who gets 1,000 and who gets 500.
The police are getting 1,000. Everybody else is working on the 500 scheme. Is that correct, Glenda?
Yeah, the only difference would be those things you already mentioned about if they hadn't been here a full year. And then we do have a few part-time employees that would get half of that based on the few hours of work they work each week.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they're gonna ask, how do you come up with paying one group more than another?
I'm going to suggest that's probably internal HR discussion, Doug, for you to have with Glenda, and you guys can work through that. I don't think that's city council business per se.
Well, I can tell you this, we already had one round of bonuses from the grant that went to a subset of the employees. And I can't remember what the max was on that, Linda, but, and then everybody else, including the police, got left out on that one. So in terms of amount, I can't speak to the amounts, but in terms of why these and not these, I mean, we can address it at least because of the COVID grant we got in 2020.
Don't start
Hey,
micromanaging this thing, guys. Put it through, as Larry suggested. And if you want them to get more money, instead of giving them one check, give them 3 or 4, spread it out. That'll cut the taxes way back.
Okay, so I sense a consensus that we'll just stick with what we've got. Okay, let's move on, please. Thanks for that. We'll go to the discussion items. To the very last one, the Asphalt Zipper. Last Wednesday, I got a call from Superintendent Button to come out to one of our streets so that I could see this amazing machine in action. It is a game changer for us. I sent out some information to all of you last week about it. I did my due diligence and contacted a city in Texas that has just loved this machine. In fact, I think I sent you a video link for their public works director who talks about it. And in a private conversation, he just said, this thing is just amazing. And Mike, your thoughts on this machine, please?
Yes, I concur with the mayor. Some of the issues that we've never had before in Bella Vista, one thing that I'm sure y'all have noticed is the freeze and thaw damage. I'm sure most of you have probably driven Highway 279.
Oh, yeah.
To see what the state's up against. Bella Vista has received a lot of that as well, maybe not quite as critical as 279. One street in particular is Grosvenor. I call it East Grosvenor, so that's on the far northeast corner of Bella Vista. We have a road out there, for instance, that normally we would undercut that and bring in, the proper material to do a base material and that type of thing. Sometimes, most of the time, we have to farm that out to contractors and, as part of our resurfacing projects. But just that project alone, I have to remove like 4,700 square yards of material. And, if I put that out to bid, that's going to cost me somewhere around $235,000 to do that. This particular machine will allow me to basically mill that road up. It basically mixes the asphalt with the base course if it's got some, goes down into the depths of the subgrade, and then basically you can add a soil stabilizer to all of that. And you do all of this, you haul away nothing, you dig nothing out, you compact it, and you put your new asphalt surface course on the top of it. That's just one project. There's another one that's a little bit smaller, that's probably going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $105,000 to do the same thing. I mean, I believe that this piece of equipment will pay for itself and then some just in the first year of ownership.
And Mike, you've already done a little bit of Dartmoor and Spanker, and if you take your ride up there today, some of it's already, falling apart, and what you didn't fix is falling apart. So, you can't keep going back, so that would make a big difference on those kind of streets too.
Yeah,
Lot of
that's
traffic on that road.
that's another good example. As a matter of fact, when we put our resurface list together, we done it prior to the freeze and thaw. And that damage that you're seeing on Spanker and Dartmoor happened because of the freeze and thaw. So
Right.
you're absolutely right. If we had this machine, we could get by without having to undercut all of those bad spots on Spanker and Dartmoor.
Larry?
Mike, you mentioned the street up in Grosvenor that had bad subgrade or bad soils underneath the pavement. When you have that condition, will this machine resolve the poor soils that are there simply by milling it up with the asphalt tailings and whatever?
There might be some isolated areas where you still might have to undercut. However, the soils out there on Grosvenor are typical Arkansas clay, lacks a little bit of the chirp. So basically what you do, like I mentioned before, is you do what they do a lot up north, and you have the soil stabilizers when you're running this machine. Soil stabilizers would be like Portland cement or possibly a lime or a concoction of both. And if you use the soil stabilizers, then you should even be able to stabilize the poor subgrade soil underneath.
That's what's in the big drums, the big plastic drums.
And are we able to make that determination with your department staff, or do we need additional outside soils experts to help us?
You could take soil samples to determine your cocktail that you're going to mix in with that soil. So you would outsource that to like a geotech laboratory or something like that.
I had a question. What is the cost on the zipper? And if we ordered one, when do we think we would get it?
215, 2 months.
215,000.
Yeah, 215,000 and in 2 months' time. Doug?
Yeah, so obviously this does the base. So we coordinate with who we contract with to do the asphalting, basically. Is that what we do?
I'm sorry, can I be more specific?
Well, this does the base, it basically takes up the road, right? And does the base. And then, so we just coordinate with the company who we contract with to do the asphalting, and they come in behind us once we've taken the road.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, you wouldn't want to go out and do a road and leave it like that for a long period of time. So you would have to logistically time it, with your paving contractor to come back reasonably right behind you to pave the road back.
But you have the ability to do smaller spots, right?
Correct.
Right.
One of the issues that we get involved with when I'm contracting this out is the logistics. So in other words, it's a logistical nightmare for us to deal with the contractor, his subs, but more important, the citizens. And I don't know if y'all are familiar, I'm sure you are, where you've driven around the townhome associations, and they have the little carport thingy there. There's hundreds of them that attach to our road. We're not responsible for all the asphalt paved carports in their parking lots. This machine would also allow me to go down through there and take out everything in between. And they could add, once you grind it all up, you can actually roll it back down, and these people can travel on that for, a short period of time.
which is what you did on the demo last Wednesday.
Yeah, that's correct. So I mean, that's a big plus right there, just getting traffic in and out. The old way of doing things, if you're undercutting, you basically have to undercut it first, and, come back. And once you get the undercut, then you have to come back with your base fill or whatever material that you're using. And then, of course, that kind of, that's a traffic problem for people trying to get in and out of their homes, so on and so forth.
So you believe that you could do more work every year possibly, which is what the city of Siegen down in Texas found.
Yeah. Just to expand on that, another issue that really wasn't, that just started to be, or starting to show up, is some of the streets out west that were they were actually asphalt paved. These were some of the last ones that Cooper done. However, since they were built, still no one has lived there. Obviously, that's all changing with all the building going on in Bella Vista. A lot of those streets are basically lost. So there's really no way I can repair them. I'm gonna have to take out that old busted up asphalt, so we can put a new road in there. This will help me accomplish that mission as well.
Mike, I watched the video, and obviously you wouldn't expect it to. I don't expect this thing to move very, very quickly. How many feet a day or miles a day could this machine take up and grind?
I don't have those stats with me. The test section that we done out on Grosvenor was probably, I'm going to say about 400 or 500 feet. And that's a full width street section. That's a 20-foot wide street. They did it in about an hour.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
And that, of course, that was with one of my operators running the loader, which, we've never done that before. So,
Yeah.
And I assume if it breaks down, you can repair it in-house.
we have the best mechanics in Northwest Arkansas and beyond.
There you go.
And that's no lie.
No, they are very good.
Cool.
Yes, Larry?
Mike, have you looked at the impact of the cost to maintain this beast in terms of the activity that you would expect to use it for in a given year? You've mentioned a number of streets where you would want to do this, and what's the impact in terms of the cost to operate and maintain this beast? And only because the tungsten carbide teeth on it do wear down and do require replacement, and they are expensive.
Yeah, on the demo, I had my main mechanic come out. A lot of that was discussed. Yeah, you are correct. It does have teeth on it and they are going to wear out. This particular machine has a watering system on it that helps the life of those carbide teeth. We did not run on the demo. We didn't run the water because it was a demo, but I can't give you a number of miles, how long those teeth are going to last. It's good. I mean, there's going to be different variations of what type of material that you're in, so on and so forth. So in other words, if you're grinding asphalt on top of a concrete bridge deck, obviously they're not going to last as long.
Yeah. Could I add on that just a little bit? I see in the invoice that it comes, this quote that we've received, it comes with a starter kit with an extra full set of bits, belts, filters, planetary fluid, and a grease gun. So that's extra. So you get your first replacements.
You do.
It would be a good question to ask though, Mike. And to your point, it's going to depend. It's going to depend on how you use it. But we could ask our friends down in Texas that we've spoken to, do they get, roughly, do they get a month out of this, 6 months out of it, or a year before they have to change this stuff out? Because it looks like every time we have to replenish that, the cost of that is about $8,000 in parts. So will we expect to do that in the first year, or will these 2 full sets that we get, will that get us through a year?
Right.
The other thing, my last comment on it is, I really, really believe in the concept of creating an atmosphere of competition for people who are trying to sell us things that are especially this pricey in terms of a capital asset. And so I kind of jumped on that today, kind of looking for, do we have other sources? And I didn't find any other sources. I found one, and that puts us at somewhat of a disadvantage. It puts us at their mercy, perhaps, because they've got a good product. They're the only one making it. They do provide some concessions related to helping America get back to work. So I recognize those. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow us to kind of put this out there, float this for multiple proposals to where everybody's on their best behavior. Their pencils are sharp, and it tends to benefit the buyer when we can create that kind of atmosphere. I presume that's the case, though. There are no other sources for this machine. Is that
I mean, you'd have to jump it in a bigger size machine but you're talking $800,000-900,000 $1 million, which basically they call a reclaimer, that actually goes in there, removes the material, augers it into the back of a dump truck, so on and so forth. This is more designed for the municipalities, the counties, and that type of thing.
We're worried about what it's going to cost to keep this thing, and there's only one out there. We do the exact same thing every year for sand and salt. We do it for our paving. We've only got one place to buy police cars, and there's a whole bunch of things that we only have one source. It's going to happen, especially if you've got a good product. It isn't something we need to be worrying about. If we're going to get it and they're going to use it and it's going to work, if there's only one, there's only one. And it's going to be the cost of doing business.
Of course, the good news is, as it becomes more popular, some entrepreneurs are going to come up and say, I can do that too. And I think I can be a little better. And then you'll see more come on the market.
And then the price may come down like everything else.
Absolutely, like TVs did way back when. Larry?
Speaking about the zipper, this thing has been around for probably 15 to 20 years at least. The pricing, I don't know that it's increased other than perhaps the rate of inflation for the most part from when it first came out onto the market. It's unique in the fact of its size. As Mike was telling us, a bigger machine that would do more, but the same thing, but do additional things, is in the nearly $1 million category. It's over 500,000 for sure. But this is in a small niche. I don't know how much competition it is, and you really need to want to use one in your community to buy it. Not everyone is going to have one in their community. I'll bet if you check Northwest Arkansas, probably we might be the only one. When I first came down here, we looked at one for a water utility to help take care of repairing streets after water lines were cut into them. But it wasn't quite cost effective for that particular purpose. The use wasn't sufficient for the cost. But I think that Mike has an idea here that has merit to it. And we have streets in the city that don't have gravel base in them, which provides drainage and some support for the pavements, and gives us longevity that you don't have in all of Bella Vista for the most part, other than newly constructed stuff where he puts down stone. So I think it has some merit, and I think we could make use of it personally.
I do know that Benton County is using it.
Bentonville's got one.
And Bentonville has one, and Fayetteville, Springdale, and Rogers are lining up demos. They're enthusiastic about it as well. Jerry, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm assuming my hand, you don't see my hand when I hold it up anymore.
Not much, no.
Sir?
No, your hand doesn't show all that much in the picture. Okay.
Okay, what I need to do to get that to work? move someplace?
Or move your
Put it in front
camera,
of your face.
or use your other hand.
Okay,
I
Put
can
it in
see
front of your
more of your
face.
left side than your right. There you go.
there you go. Hey, don't we belong to the Houston Buying Association group that basically cuts out any negotiation and gets us the best price available?
That is correct, and they are signed up. That's HGAC. Fire departments use them. I've used them. We are a member. That's a purchasing co-op, so this thing has already been bid out. And they're also giving us a $15,000 discount. They're going back to the 2019 pricing. But it has been already competitively bid out.
Okay, so we got the best price now available anyway, even if it was available for bidding. No, that our competitor was available for bidding. On the small potholes, I say the small potholes, the bigger potholes that you've got to patch, I'm assuming you would take out a larger section of the pavement than rather than just patching the hole. Is that right?
Yeah, in the larger areas, yeah. I mean, just for a small pothole, you probably wouldn't use this equipment. I mean, this thing is 4 foot wide, so.
Okay, so then these larger potholes like on Dartmoor and Spanker, is there any way to smooth those out so they're not quite, I mean, to patch them more close to the original pavement?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is more than a pothole. That's some of that freeze thaw damage that we got on Spanker and Dartmoor. So
Right.
This machine would be used in a situation like that.
Like I'm talking about just the potholes. I mean, it's like you put patch in those potholes, and like it's a couple of not very short period of time, they're right back where they were. I mean, the fill or the patch just doesn't stay. Is there any way to deal with those?
Yes, and we try not to do what you just mentioned. We might have to do that temporarily until we can get back out there and do either use this machine or you make a square cut, dig it down and, fix it properly. However, sometimes in the winter, we can only do that temporary patch because we do not have the product to do it. Like if it's 10 degrees outside or something, the companies around here don't even make that product that time of year. So basically what we're doing is we're putting a temporary patch there until we can come back later and do a permanent patch.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Kelly. Yes, Doug?
No, that's okay. I just said this is not an additional appropriation. You're going to take this out of the current street budget for 2021, right?
Yes, it'll come out of Mike's capital. It'll be account 100, and he has the money there. Okay. Yes, Larry.
Basically, what you're going to do is take it out of the money he's going to save in his capital budget.
Yes, that's right. Exactly right. So, Mr. Kelly, if you'd be good enough to pull together a resolution, please, Mike, if you would work with Jason.
Sure.
And we'll put it on the menu for next Monday night.
Mike, get with me tomorrow. I need the details on everything, but. we'll get it
Okay.
done.
Okay. Thank you. Now let's jump to item C. Authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Superior Automotive Group Asylum Springs pursuant to a state procurement contract for the purchase of a 2001 Chev Traverse all-wheel drive and a 2001 Dodge Ram 2500 4x4 pickup for the police department. Chief, I know that you've been looking closely at these products. We have a problem with our existing pickup. Perhaps you could share some of that with council, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, something happened to my camera. But yeah, so I know some of the council members had mentioned a little while back about wanting some more information when making decisions on cars from us. And so I just wanted to bring to light some of the things that Chief Sims and I specifically do and look at when we're trying to replace vehicles. One of the things that we need to consider is these are all first responder vehicles. These are vehicles that we need to be able to hop into and they need to operate when they need to operate. We can't afford to, at a moment's notice, have one of our cars go down for some maintenance type issues. So we definitely want to look at mileage is one of the key factors. I know it was brought up about looking at maintenance records, and I think that's appropriate in many cases. Look at maintenance records, but some of the things we do is we look at mileage, and that's key because when I first got here, we rotated our patrol cars out at 100,000 miles, and that's really industry standard for patrol cars. But I talked to the mayor about that. We made a decision early on to try to run these things a little longer and get some additional mileage out of them, save some money. So we run our patrol vehicles as it stands to 120,000 miles. And so and they're V8s, they're Hemis, and so they can usually do that without a problem. But I'm really uncomfortable if I was to try to replace a car, for example, in the future that had 120,000 miles but had a stellar maintenance record. I'd really hate to keep that any longer. And so I just want the council to understand that even if the car is 120,000 miles with a stellar maintenance record, it's still really something we need to rotate out because I can't afford to have my officers jump in there and have a catastrophic failure at a moment's notice. So we'll definitely take into consideration. I think maintenance records are really important, but mileage is something we just have to look at. And I think sometimes even if a car is running just fine, we still need to rotate them out at certain mileages. So I just wanted to bring that to that point of at least my point of view up. I think Chief Sims has some additional concerns. I spoke with him today, and he has certain vehicles that are on the front line, first responder type ones that he tries to keep, at whatever mileage he uses as well to rotate vehicles out. So I'd be happy to take any further questions. And also, like the cars I'm rotating out today, for example, don't fit the 120,000 mile. They're not at 120,000 miles. So you may question me as to why I'm rotating them out. And I'll be happy to explain that to you. So there's other things that I took into consideration with these two vehicles. And if, for example, the truck has 101,000 miles on it, it's F-150, but its transmission is slipping. And we use that truck to go out when we get lesso items, which the council's familiar with the lesso items we get free from the military. We'll haul them back on trailers with that truck. That truck, we've been told by our shops department, really shouldn't be hauling things anymore. So we're going to rotate that out, keep it in the fleet for just driving around as a vehicle we could use around town when we need a truck. But that's why we need a new truck for that vehicle. The other vehicle, the Equinox, we're rotating out has just over 100,000 miles. So realistically, it could go a little longer, but we're going to keep that in the fleet as a CAC, which is it's an organization we take children to when we do interviews that are children that are victims. And so we're going to keep that in the fleet, put some cameras in it so we could transport these children to this organization for interviews and sort of record that transport just to protect all the individuals involved in the transport. So that's sort of some of our reasoning. And Chief Sims, he may want to chime in a little bit, but we spoke reference to first responder aspect of the vehicles. And I just think we need to consider each department a little differently when we're looking at replacing vehicles.
Hey, Chief,
Yes, sir.
isn't it also true that, police cars don't get turned off that often? So the speedometer could say 101,000, but as far as time on the motor could be double that?
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's a very good point. We do idle these vehicles really constantly for various reasons, equipment we have in them. The officers are always in them. They may not be running and, they may not be driving, but they're almost always on. So that is more wear and tear in the engine. So I'm quite comfortable running them 120,000. I think we've done a good job with that with our and I would agree with Mike and give him kudos. I believe our mechanics are the best ones around because they're able to keep these vehicles running and they do a really good job. So yeah, that's a good point. The vehicles may have 120,000, but they may have idled for the equivalent of 130,000.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, thoughts? Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Thank you, Chief.
You bet.
We'll move on to item B. This too is Chief Graves. It's a resolution amending the 2021 city budget in the amount of $18,959.93 for the purchase of an IDEMIA live scan fingerprint machine for the police department. The one you have now, I understand, just decided to roll over and not work anymore. And rather than press forward and have an emergency meeting, you've been going back to the old ink.
Yeah, so yeah, we do it. We have a fingerprint machine. In the old days, you just fingerprint with ink on paper and send the cards in. We've got a lot more modernized over the last few years. And this is all done a live scan. It's done over the computer, so we can actually fingerprint a suspect or somebody who comes in needs to be fingerprinted to get a job at the schools or something like that. We can fingerprint them. Their fingerprints get sent into ACIC and NCIC. The records checks are done immediately, and so it's really what we need to do to continue to press on and keep the organization running. We can do it with ink fingerprints in a pinch, in a hurry, in an emergency, but really those have a failure rate when they get read of about 20%. So they're not really that good, and it really slows us down for what we need to do. So the machine we have, it's been here a long time. It was here when I got here, and it's a good machine, but basically we started having trouble with it. We called the company. And they're not there anymore. Nobody answers the phone. It's out of business. And so the company's gone out of business. We can't, the problem is we have to update this machine because it is a small computer. We can't receive the updates for it. The state's having the same problem. They have several of these older machines in their inventory, and they're having to rotate them out. So basically the machine has been crashing on us over the past month. Our IT department's been able to do some work to keep it running. But it's just a matter of time till it crashes for good. So we need to buy a new machine. We went out, we asked the state what they use. They're going to this IDEMIA. It's a really good machine. It's one of the more cost-effective ones. The company's worked with us to get us a really good price. It meets all requirements. And again, the state's using it. And so it's a tried and true because they have it and they've been using it for quite a while. So that's, we're requesting to get this machine funded now so that we won't have a crisis when our machine goes down and we have a period of a month or two when we can't do real-time fingerprints on suspects.
Okay, Larry?
Chief Graves, thank you for looking at this. Do these things have a typical life cycle schedule like a computer or whatever?
They kind of do. I wish I knew how long, and I'm not sure. I don't see Captain Cook if he's on right now. How long we've had this current one running, but they're like computers, and what they do is we receive updates on these things several times a year, and that's what kind of keeps them running and keeps them up to date, just like your home computer updates. They go for quite some time. The folks we've talked to have had these things already in circulation for several years. So I anticipate we'll get a lot of time out of this.
Chief Graves, can you hear me?
I can.
We've had this machine approximately 7 years.
Okay, so that's a good amount of time. And really, if the company was still in business and we could receive the updates for this machine, we could still keep it running, our current one. But the problem is it's out of business. They just sort of they didn't even leave a forwarding number. They just sort of disappeared. It's kind of weird. And so they're just gone. So if with a new machine, as long as we receive the updates, we can keep it running. Not indefinitely, but for a good decade, I'm sure.
I can tell you that when I first came here, it was running XP. And then John upgraded it to Windows 10. And when I was looking after the Walmart account, we were upgrading their XP and it was 2013. So I would say it's been with us probably for anywhere from 6 to 8 years, which isn't bad at all.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
That's good.
But yeah, technology, desktops, laptops, iPads, I have a 27-inch Mac I bought 8 years ago. I called in, I was having an issue with it, with loading software. And I talked to a guy at Apple support and he goes, "Oh, you have a vintage machine." So it's an Apple, right? I mean, it's top of the line technology, and it's slowly dying on me. It takes forever to boot it up. So if this thing is 8 years old and it's constantly gets these updates online and things like that, it's seen its better day. So it's not a hard sell to me.
Doug, it reminds me of the Blu-ray when it first came out. Connie and I bought one for a few $100s. We thought it was the latest and greatest around 2006. And we moved here in 2010, soon after it died on us. So I took it down to, I guess, Best Buy, because I bought it in Arizona and Best Buy. I thought the Geek Squad could fix it. And he said, "Sir, it's going to cost you $85 just for me to pop it open. If you go down aisle number such and such, you could pick up a brand new one for $84.
Yeah.
So, back to that earlier discussion about over time, things, the price comes down. But anyway.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments? Jerry?
Does the equipment of this type, does that come under the Houston Buying Association? I mean, does it have to go out on bid, or is this something that, again, that can come through that organization?
Well, Jerry, this is below $20,000.
Okay,
So it wouldn't have to be competitively bid, but we do have written quote requirements and to make best efforts. So it wouldn't have to necessarily be a part of one of the cooperative agreements. It could be, but it wouldn't have to be.
but if it was, that would be the best price available for it though, right?
Yep. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, let's move then to item A. I guess we've gone really backwards on this one. And this is John's on the IT side. It's an ordinance waiving the requirements of a formal competitive bidding and authorizing a contract with Stronghold Data LLC in the amount of $37,927.56, plus applicable taxes for the purchase of IT rapid recovery software and hardware. John, do you want to speak to it, please?
Sure. Yeah, we've used Rapid Recovery for a little over 4 years now to back up our critical systems. And we've grown quite a bit over the last 4 years. We have many systems now that we didn't have when I started. Like Carrie has done a very good job getting away from paper records. She has all of our financial things scanned in electronically. Wayne uses a product called Laserfish to scan all the ordinances in. And we have, more police cars, more dash cams, more footage out there. So it's really, the hardware is getting close to 5 years old, and it's time to not only get new hardware, but to expand so we can continue to back up all our critical systems.
And this is in your budget, John?
Yes, it's a budget and capital project. And the reason we're wanting to waive bidding and stick with rapid recovery is because our backup history is in this proprietary format. So if I switch to another popular product, we would lose access to our history, or I would have to maintain two systems, a new system and an old system. And I certainly don't want to do that, so.
And you're looking to move to third and final? To move quickly on this?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, questions for John? Yes, Larry.
Oh, I was entertained in reading their proposal. They must not have a letter D in their computer. It was interesting. When I looked at it, I said, it seems to have a lot of spaces unnecessarily, and then I figured it out. Is that intentional, or is there a funky thing about the letter D in their proposal?
He's just looking at it now. In the meantime, are there any other questions?
No.
I see a lot of Ds in mine. I don't know the version Larry's looking at.
Okay,
It's the PDF download from from the city website, but all the Ds are missing.
Doug, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
No.
Okey doke. John, do you see any missing Ds?
No, I'm not exactly sure about that, Larry. I don't know.
So Steve, you've got all your Ds. Larry doesn't. John's got his Ds. 2 Ds minus 1 D. It just gets too complicated.
Well,
All
it certainly
righty.
makes good sense to retain the ability to go back and look at the history without having to maintain 2 systems. And I think that in itself overweighs the need for a direct competitive bid on this. I don't know. That would my implication.
I agree. Okay, thank you. That's the end of the new business. Now we go into our normal discussion items. We have a few to give you an update. Doug, the first 2 are yours. Let's start with trails, please, and then move into septic.
Trails, not much has changed since the last update. Substantial completion on the Blowing Springs to Metfield pave connectors stayed the same at, now they're saying mid-April. We're waiting on 1 utility pole to be moved over by Metfield. As soon as that gets done, almost everything will be done outside of the park. So they're preparing the park right now for paving. So we're hopeful this will finish up in the next month or 6 weeks. And soft surface trails are pretty much done. They're adding some connectors and doing some updates over on Tweety Bird. But for the most part, those are done. We haven't gotten a final bill on those yet, but it's pretty much wrapped up.
It's still running under budget too, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And
Doug, when you say we haven't gotten a bill yet, what are you talking about?
Well, on some of the final punch list items, I need to get with those guys and make sure that because last year we had a couple of things come in after the year, and I just need to follow up with them and make sure that they've gotten us all, so that months don't go by and then we get something from them and it's a surprise. So,
but this is still funded by the grant money that we've received.
yes, sir.
Okay.
absolutely. But we also have to prepare an end of grant report as well. So we have to make sure that all the bills are in, everything's finished. Larry?
One question is, will they be putting those directional posts on all of the trails or where trails cross to provide direction for the bicyclists? I've noticed in driving down a number of the streets that there's a 4-sided pole there, and it's got a label on it as to the trail name and a direction to go to follow it, whether you turn right, go straight ahead. I think that's really nice, and I was just wondering how extensive that is.
There should be, Larry, and they also tell the rider whether it's an easy trail, a medium trail, or a difficult trail.
Right. Yeah.
If you've got an area that's missing one, I can get that to Trailblazers. There were hundreds of those out there, and we recently found a road crossing that they left off. So there are some of those spots that they may need to go back and put one in.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on trails, gentlemen? All right, into the world of septic, Doug.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah. So last city council meeting, you challenged me with coming up with an ordinance by May, and we've made a step forward in that. This Thursday, we're going to have a roundtable discussion with everyone that participated the last time. That includes the Northwest Arkansas Board of Realtors, Northwest Arkansas Builders Association, 4 or 5 people from the Department of Health. I believe Linda is going to participate in that. We've invited City Council. And since the last meeting, Mr. Wilms and I have gone back and forth on a proposal that gotten over to us to help us with the definition of a bedroom and some things to include in the ordinance. So I'll be sharing that with everyone in the group prior to the meeting on Thursday for discussion. And at the next work session, I can share the results of that with you all.
Great. Any questions on the world of septic?
Well,
Alright.
this is John Flynn. I just want to mention Doug Fowler and I have a meeting at the same time with the A&P Commission, but I understand there'll be several council folks on at this meeting, so I think that's good. I was at the first one and found it very educational.
Okay, thank you. I sent that invitation to 20 people and we went back and forth for a while on the times. And it was getting the schedules to work for 20 people was tough. So me and the executive director just finally settled on the date that we knew it would work for a handful of people and just hoped that it would work for all. And I know there's going to be some conflicts on that.
Oh, yeah, I understand it. Like I say, if there's going to be 2 or 3 council folks on there, I think that's good. We'll have it covered.
And I think since the last meeting, John, we've added a couple of bankers that wanted to participate. So I think we've got the entire real estate base covered.
Great.
Okay. Well, John, since you were talking, let's keep it up with the Flynn Show, and we'll go to impact fees.
Okay. As you probably recall from the last meeting, I was hoping impact fees would go a little faster than they have. We are having our second, we're pretty much toward the end now. We're having our second meeting of the Citizen Advisory Council on Friday afternoon. And Carson Bice feels like he's pretty much got it down. And in fact, I brought up the possibility of him making a presentation to council next Monday night. And that's not possible for legal reasons. So we could either have a special work session sometime after Monday to for him to bring council up to speed with what his final recommendation is. Or else, you know, if we didn't do that, we'd wait for the April meeting. I recall some folks on council were pretty anxious to get going, and I am also. So that's where it stands. We're pretty much going to be at the end a week from now, and it's just a matter of when you all want to hear what Tischler Bice is proposing.
All righty, Larry.
I read Attorney Kelly's memo from March 14th of 2017 on the impact fee issue. One of the summary items in there is to identify public facilities such as streets that are to be improved because of new development. Do we have somewhere a list of our streets that are not paved or basically impassable and need to be reconstructed? In other words, can you classify some of those streets of our 50 miles or so that are going to be in the category that we need to do major improvements on in order to have houses built there? Do we have a list of those anywhere? And if we don't, we probably should, classifying them in some standardization that you need to completely regrade them. You need to regrade and drain and put base course in. You need to do that plus paving because that's one of the things that we need to identify, I think, as far as what our projects are going to be. And it would help us get a handle on what the dollar amounts are. And I don't know, maybe we've already done that, John?
Actually, Larry,
Mike,
John, just a sec. I have sent out a note last week to all department heads. They are to have their projects back to me by the end of the month. And that included streets at the time, but John and I spoke today. He called me and gave me an update on streets, having spoken to Carson Bice. So John, I'm going to ask if you would update council, please, on that discussion.
Well, I wasn't sure if Jason Kelly should maybe weigh in.
I I was about to say that too. Everybody was wanting to get in on this one. One of the key things in the state impact fee ordinance, when it talks about the kind of things that can be funded, it has to be new development. So these streets are old development. These streets are there. They're not built very well. They may not have been finalized. They may not have been fully asphalted at currently, but we have to meet the definition of new development. So that's a complicator, because we might have someone challenge us and say, well, these roads are platted and built, but they're not new. And so that, that could draw a challenge. Now, there's another side to that argument, and that is there's right of way there, but there's no passable street. And I don't know how a court would come down, but I do think that kind of thing could draw a challenge. And whenever you're collecting a fee and you've got a question about the legitimacy of the fee, we really need to be on the safe side, because if we get sued claiming that this part of this fee is an illegal exaction because we can't collect a part of a fee to redo existing street that is not new, then we would be in a position of having to repay a lot of money. And so we probably don't want to go there. Now, I have not spoken directly to the Tischler Bice people about this. They asked the question rightfully, and I think it is a legitimate question. Now, if we're talking about a new street that we're going to have to put in, we'll have to obtain right of way and buy property and build it. That would be included in an impact fee. But I just wanted to offer that.
Okay, Steve?
I want to try to get back to John's question and take a shot at that. But I see this again, where we're out. I see people are starting to wrap their minds around this, and we're trying to contemplate what we might be advised by Tischler Bice, but I haven't heard from them yet. And so I would go back to John's question, and that is, I think we should move forward with a sense of urgency about this. As soon as Tischler Bice is ready to give us a readout on where they at and what we ought to be considering, I think we ought to hear from them, not wait for scheduled meetings. So that's my sense of that. The other thing I would say is I see these dollars as fungible dollars. Any dollar we raise by an impact fee frees up a dollar that we were going to spend otherwise. And so I want to keep this, again, at the simplest level. And I think Tischler Bice will appreciate that. Let's hear them out. Let's have them tell us, these are your no-brainers. These are the projects that you guys can charge impact fees and carry these out. I bet you we have a list that probably exceeds what we have in mind for impact fees. And they will advise us on that. So I would say, let's not hesitate. As soon as they are available, I'd like to see us do a special work session to hear directly from them.
Yep, I agree. Jerry?
Jason, a street that is destroyed or basically made impassable or again destroyed by home construction, that would not qualify as new.
As it relates to the street, I mean, it's to fund new development. So if the best example I can give you, and it's not our concern of ours, but because of all the growth, we're going to have to expand our sewer treatment facility. And that's new development. That would be a new add-on addition because of growth. That's an easy one. But now we've got existing streets that just are having more wear and tear because of more population. So, but there is an element there that each new residence is a new development, because development can include residential development. We're in a unique situation where, and I may have said this to you before, I don't know, but I'll say it again. Bella Vista is unique because all of the various subdivisions that make up Bella Vista were accepted with the public rights of way, were accepted by the county for filing before the roads were built out to any particular standard. And I can tell you nowadays, if we were fortunate enough to have a big 40-acre parcel on some side of town and someone was wanting to build a a commercial development out there and put some public streets, we would not accept that subdivision either unless the roads had already been built out to our standard, or they posted bonds or agreed to cover the cost of that. Because then the city would have the money to finish out the roads to our standard. Here, the roads were cut in basically as, I'm going to assume, as gravel roads with ditches back. I don't know what they looked like back in the late 60s, early 70s, but they were better than what they are now. And they've just become totally overgrown, almost to the point where it looks like there's no street there, but there is. So it is, to an extent, an existing development. There is a road there of some sort. There's an argument there, but I'm going to tell you, I tend to think we might not be on the winning side of it if we push that. Now, are there impact? Think about this though, and this kind of gets back to a little bit about what Steve was saying about offsets. Think about what a new home, every new home costs us more. Why is that? Well, you might have to eventually have more ambulances. You might have to eventually have more patrol cars for the police. I can also think, well, there's existing wear and tear on roads, but that's not new development. We might have to expand our facilities because of growth. That's what impact fees are geared toward, making the city bigger, making the infrastructure bigger, not necessarily caring for what we've already got in place. So if that helps you draw a line, I'd give you that. But just to answer your question, Mr. Snow, wear and tear on a road, I don't think that's going to cut it in and of itself.
So if whatever that impact fee is determined to be, $1,000, $2,000, whatever that impact fee is determined to be, so that fee could be added to the cost of a building permit and accomplish the same thing, but not call it an impact fee.
Well, if any fee that does this is an impact fee, so we can't play word games with it and call it something else and do that. What I mean, what I was saying and how it fits into what Steve was saying, as this city grows, we're going to incur these expenses. We're going to eventually have to add another fire station, more police officers, more police cars, all that. So you got to ask yourself, all right, we've got this growth, this add-on stuff, we're going to fund by impact fees because we've got the people that are already living here having to already take care of it. And we don't want to put that burden on the people who are already here. So if you think about it, we're going to spend this money anyway. So the impact fee offsets our future expense. That's a good way to think about offset. And then that fund you would have spent on the increase, because we're going to have impact fees to provide for additional facilities in, you name it, whatever it is. Now that frees up the rest of our budget that we can use and do resurfacing, for example. So.
Okay, Jim, did you have a question?
No, sir, I'm just listening.
Or were you just scratching your armpit? I wasn't quite sure. It's all one of these things going on.
I didn't even move my hands. You're really good. You're thinking about what I want to do in a few minutes. No, I'm actually sitting here with my hands between my knees, just listening, which sometimes is a better thing to do.
All right,
Really
so,
quick night, yeah.
so John, I think if you want to get in touch with Carson and see how close he is, and then you and I can chat. And if need be, then I'm going to have to move up the department head's list of projects before the end of the month if we're going to meet sooner. But you and I can chat after you speak with Carson. Larry?
I guess the entertaining issue about this, and this is in Jason's memo, is that the impact fees have to be spent within 7 years of the date of payment. So when we take our first payment in, if we're saying we're going to do expansion to one of our fire stations or do an outpost for the police department for bad weather, from day one, when we start collecting that first fee, we have 7 years to get that project under construction. It doesn't have to be completed, but it must be, I think, initiated and committed to. Is that right, Jason?
Yes, sir. We do have a time limit, and when we spend that money, and if it's not spent within that time period, we have to make refunds. So we need to, and part of our requirement is to have basically a capital plan where we're going to talk about what it is we're going to fund.
Yep.
And this is all what Tischler Bice is helping us do. But, we can't just collect the money and then think about in the future what things might be great to spend it on. We got to have a plan. We've really got to get some things figured out on the front end.
So if let's take a hypothetical here. We're going to build a new fire station because of growth and development. And so we have a 7-year plan that we have to start that on. What about the people who come in after we have that fire station completed? Are they going to have to pay towards that indebtedness that we've created?
Well, we're not, they might still be paying impact fees because we've got a plan, but they might be paying, theoretically, the fee you're collecting is going to be helping you recoup the cost of what's being built. So you may not have enough impact fees to build all that. If you have enough impact, you may not want to assess as much impact fees as you might need to do some of these things. I really, in terms of the amount and the logistics of that, I'm really going to have to defer to Tischler Bice on the study side of this. I can just tell you, you've got to spend it in 7 years. I can tell you, you've got to have a plan. I can tell you, if you don't spend it in 7 years, you're going to have to refund it. Or if you don't start spending it in 7 years, you're going to have to refund it. So the logistics of how to work that's a little outside of my expertise.
So some of the things that we're looking at, just so you can get a handle on this, because we've been doing a capital plan for 5 years out for about the last 4 or 5 years. And there are some unfunded projects. We do know that we're going to have to put another fire station down into the southwest somewhere in order to have adequate coverage as we see more and more growth in that area. One thing that you don't see on the monthly residential permits is we actually have a saturation map. So we can see the clusters of where the builders are actually building, and that'll help us determine where we have to put another fire station number 5. We know we have to completely refurbish fire station number 1, but that's a refurbishment. It's not a brand new. So that is different. We also know that with the growth, while the new public safety facility will be able to handle the growth of new bodies, we are going to have to incur costs in the area of more cars. We're looking seriously at expanding the motorcycle unit. And there will be additional costs as we grow on the police side. One of the things that we're looking at on the library side is, will there have to be an expansion on the east side? And does that mean that the foundation sometime in the future is going to deed over the library building and the grounds to the city? And that could very well happen as well. So that's the kind of thought process that we're going through, trying to take it out 7 years so that we can identify these projects and then put them in the capital plan and present it to you as well as to Carson. Are there other questions as well?
I have a final comment for me, and that would be this, that I anticipate what's going to happen here is the department heads are going to put their ideas and their plans together. They're going to put them in front of Tischler Bice. Tischler Bice is going to come back eventually and tell us that your appetite, your need for capital investment is X, and your ability to collect impact fees is Y, and Y is probably less than X. So I don't think we're going to have a hard time once we see the list in its totality. I think it's going to be easy for them to advise us, hey, you guys want to be pretty sure about this stuff. And here's how you get to an 85% probability that all this money is going to be spent on these projects. Charge impact fees in the Y amount, so somewhat less than what the full demand is. So I wanted to get us to that point. I think we'll get clarity around this once we get Tischler Bice to come in, feed what they've heard from the department heads, and tell us, here's the range of impact fees that you guys want to be considering.
Oh, if I could just say one more thing, and Mr. Snow brought it up, and impact fees is a source and a way to deal with things. But you know, you can look at new home permit fees. If we think that I don't know what that permit fee is now, but we can charge a reasonable amount for a permit fee. And if we need to tack on X number of hundreds of dollars or $1,000, I'm not saying that needs to happen. I'm not suggesting an amount, but we can look at our permit fees, and if they're reasonable and we've got a good faith basis on what to base that on, because of, say, wear and tear on the street outside the new home, we need to be able to fix that up. So we're going to need to charge more permit fees in order for us to do what we need to do. We could look at that. So that's not impact fee. You can look at other mechanisms. But if you try to impose some kind of a new charge and because of the new growth and you don't follow the procedures, it's going to be considered an impact fee and you're going to have a problem. So maybe we do need to look at some of the existing permitting fees, though. That's something you could look at.
To me, that would be separate and aside from impact fees. Those permit fees, they should be reviewed every 5 years probably to make sure, are these still adequate? Do they cover all of the administrative cost of issuing these permits? But impact fees really go to what is the bigger infrastructure impact of these builders rushing into Bella Vista? What is the bigger impact that there's a burden today of existing city residents and ought to be carried more so by those that are coming in to Bella Vista to build?
And just as an aside to Doug, we did look at all your fees. Probably, I think it was 2017, and we changed a lot of them. We upped them, so you'll probably want to look at it again next year. So just an FYI to tuck it away. Okay. Nothing else? Let's move on then, please. I'm going to skip over Jerry's and do his last. Farmers Market. We had 2 responses to our RFP. One from a company in Colorado and the other was from Samantha Moser, who has done it before for 2018, 2019. Of course, last year, unfortunately, we had to cancel because of the COVID crisis. I informed her today, and there are a number of things that we're working through, which I think will be quite quick. And then Mr. Kelly will be able to draw up a contract. But just the proposed dates are April the 18th to October the 17th. I asked if Sam thought that was a doable set of dates, and she, in fact, just came back to me as we've been meeting here and said yes. She's also going to be responsible for securing Cooper's permission to host it down in the Sugar Creek Shopping Center, and she's also going to be responsible for obtaining insurance, and she has agreed to do that as well. So there'll be more, but I'm excited that we're going to be able to bring it back this year. I think it's something that the community really, really enjoys. I've had a lot of people express their desire to have it back this year, and I would agree with them. I think it's a good community event. We're just going to have to use common sense. If the governor decides to yet extend his emergency beyond the end of March, we'll have to see what he's going to include in that and how we're going to do it. So we'll just have to play it by ear, but I think it's very doable this year, given the decrease in the COVID and the great increases that we've been doing, especially locally on the vaccine front. So I feel pretty good about it. Okay, Steve had asked on the opening what the clear cut down on Mercy Way is across from the Mercy Clinic next to the vet clinic. Apparently that's our friends over at Cooper who decided that they were going to clear cut the whole area. No idea what they're going to put in there. They have talked about it in the past as being a possible shopping center or strip mall of some description. Unfortunately, they didn't get the permits that they require from both ourselves and ADEQ. So Doug's folks went in last Friday and did a stop order. And so hopefully our friends at CCI are getting all the necessary permits. Doug, have you heard anything from them at all?
Not since Friday, but when we had that discussion, they understand what they needed and They've submitted them to us and submitted them to the state. They just haven't been issued yet.
And when we say submit to the state, that's our friends at ADEQ.
In the application, yes, sir.
Okay. So if you get queries at all, that's what it's all about. But we haven't seen any plans, Doug, for that, have we?
I have seen their proposal for the fill, the amount of fill they want to bring in to
Right.
that floodplain to build it up in order to develop on it. But beyond that, we have not seen any large scale development plans, no.
Okay. So it'll have to go through your old haunt, Steve, up on the planning commission, you know, as all large scale developments do, and then it'll come to us. All righty. Jerry, I'm going to hand the floor over to you for the open burn issue, please.
Well, my concern regards the clearing of lots for new home construction, where they go in and just totally wipe out the lot of any trees or anything, and then pile it all up in a pile and set it on fire. My proposal would be that we eliminate burning altogether, that the trees that are cut, I understand that some of the big builders, some of the major builders, if there's enough trees on a lot for a logger to come in and cut those trees and take them out as logs, then you probably got just the trimmings left behind, as well as the stumps, which can be hard to burn all that stump, but it could happen. But it'd be better off for as far as the smoke that it would create for them to be hauled off. What else? Gotta look at my notes here real quick. I would propose that the trees that are cut, that the logs from those trees, or that the trees on a lot that's not going to be, again, used or picked up by a logger, but those trees that are cut, that they be cut into the logs, and the logs roll over to the side where firewood cutters can come in and take advantage of those logs. Firewood is even getting to be at a surplus. There's not a surplus, but getting to be at a hard to come by. I know this past season, which was unusually cold anyway, but I know a couple of individuals that sold out completely of their firewood. So anyway, I think it's a total waste to cut these trees and just pile them up and burn them. So that's kind of a start.
Many years ago, I put my 2 cents worth in, when they were building the big churches, they did pile up their logs and let people come in and cut. And then all of a sudden, there got to be a liability problem because somebody got hurt, and all of a sudden, nobody's cutting anything. So putting them to the side and let the public have at it, that probably won't fly.
Well, that's what Carroll Electric does right now.
Well, Carroll Electric doesn't give you permission to do it. People are just doing it at their own, it's not expense, but at your own liability if something happens. So if you're going to put it you're going to put it on somebody's private lot, somebody's responsible for them trees.
Carroll Electric has actually said publicly that if anybody wants to go onto their easement and cut up the trees that are there and split them, they're able to do so at their own liability and their own risk. We've seen quite a few people actually go out and do it.
Yeah, I've seen that too, but if you're going to stick it on somebody's edge of their lot, then it calls back on a property owner, not Carroll Electric.
Well, just have to, before anybody cut any wood, just have to have a liability release from them. That'd be a part of it.
Good luck.
Steve?
Mayor, I just wanted to say I share Jerry's concerns. I may perhaps come at it from a different angle, and that is I want to make sure that we have, and it sounds like we do, we have the proper ordinances on the books today that say there's no unattended fire. If you've got an unattended fire, you're in violation of the law, especially these lot burns that are going on. And I hope we're enforcing those. I hear a lot of chatter about builders now being haphazard, perhaps not getting permission from the fire department first. That's a requirement. And then when they do the burn, it's got to be attended. And if it's time to go home and the fire is still burning, then
I think there seems to be some confusion maybe between the fire department and the police department as to who has responsibility for issuing a citation for a fire left unattended. I don't know if.
That's a good question, Jerry. I wanted to ask a question. Has a builder ever been cited? How many builders have been cited in the last 12 months for violation of our burn laws?
I can answer that. I went back and looked at the request of Councilmember Snow. And so we've had approximately over probably the last 12-month running cycle, we've had about 35 unattended burns or controlled burns that we've been asked to go out on. Now, the fire department responds to these initially. So they went out on about 35 annually. I talked to Chief Sims. He seems to think that's pretty routine. So it's not a ton, but it's you know, we do get some complaints. And I looked through our records, and we've issued 2 citations over that period for uncontrolled burns. So it was determined after the fire department went out, they gave us a call that these individuals should be cited, and they were cited for unlawful burning and criminal mischief. I think each one of them on both occasions. So people do get cited, but you know, discretion is used. You know, Chief Sims could chime in on you know what they're looking for when they go out on these things. He'd probably be better to talk about that. But folks do get cited. But like I say, we had 35 in the last running 12-month period, and 2 individuals were cited.
That's very good. That's exactly the kind of data we need to be looking at. And then when people are cited, are the penalties sufficient to deter them from doing that again? Or are the penalties sufficient to deter them from doing it the first time? And that is up to and including, do we suspend their ability to pull building permits?
Well, we don't necessarily have the ability to do that. So there are some state law violations related to burning. There's a state law unlawful burning, which is different than our ordinance. But as to our ordinance itself, I think I gave you the penalty range. Now, that's the range. And so the judge is the ultimate decider of what that fine is going to be. So if someone goes in with a citation, city code citation from the police or code enforcement, either one, but it's for violation of a city ordinance, the judge determines what his fine is going to be. And, you know, this, I'm going to tell you, I don't know for a fact because I haven't seen the latest. I don't have the latest sheet in front of me, but I'm guessing if someone is written a city ordinance burning ticket, they're probably going to be assessed a fine of less than $100 plus court cost for a first time. And I mean, even though the maximum penalties are a lot higher, and that sounds low, and it is low, but also keep in mind, we have people that go to court that drive drunk and can do a fine up to $1,000 and spend up to a year in jail, and they pay a fine of about $350 and don't see the inside of a jail. And so from the judge's perspective, he looks at, well, of all these cases I've got, of the more serious ones that I deal with, which are going to be drunk drivers and domestic abuse cases, he really doesn't have any room to put them in jail. And the fines run in the neighborhood of hundreds of dollars. So I don't think it would be hard to get the judge to fine someone more for leaving an unattended fire at an empty lot versus sending someone a threatening text over their phone and scaring someone to death. You know, it's just it has to. The judge throws all this stuff on the balance, and there's almost like a scale of severity. City ordinances are on the lower side of that scale. That's not to say you could set the maximum up to what the state law would allow you to do, which you're I think actually it went up. So you may be able to increase that cap a little bit. I don't know if it would change what the judge does with the case.
I just have a question. So the original conversation started out with potentially, or maybe, Jerry, you make a proposal to just ban burning in Bella Vista. Is that where you're going with this?
Ban large scale burning.
On clearing of lots during new home construction? I mean, are you gonna write a ordinance to put before the city council to do that?
I have sent everyone a copy of Bentonville's burn ordinance, basically, which sets out, well, number one, before you do any large scale burning in Bentonville, you got to have a permit that the fire department issues.
Yep.
And then a battalion chief goes out and inspects the property as to where it's going to take place. They charge a fee for it. And you can't have a large scale burn within so many feet of another structure, within so many feet of a road. Can't be within 100 feet of a road, or can't be within 100 feet of another structure. Wind conditions can't be more than such. There's about 5 different things that you have to comply with in order to burn any kind of a large scale burn.
Yeah, and I did. I kind of went through that, but that's not banning burning though. That's just managing it.
No, that's not banning it. That's just burning it. That is an alternate proposal, knowing that the good possibility of banning burning would not fly.
And I appreciate Jerry's kind of bringing that to council tonight, and we're kind of trying to find, where is our common ground on this? I think I've heard enough to feel like, the majority of our builders, they're all going to be like any other group. The majority of them are going to want to follow the rules, do things right, protect their reputation in building in this community, and they want to follow the rules. If we have unscrupulous builders, and we have many new builders coming to Bella Vista now, people that have never worked here before, and if they want to violate these ordinances, because it's far more expensive to have those logs removed by truck than it is to take a citation and pay $150 for it and keep on going, then our model's not right. We need deterrent. And it seems to me, I'm not sure why there would be any problem with us if we have a repeat offender by a builder who's not practicing by the rule, that we could suspend them from getting a permit in the future.
One thing you could do is you could set a minimum fine. In other words, you can set there's a scale where you can say a fine of no less than X amount, nor more than X, whatever. So now it's up to, but you could say no less than $500, no more than 1,000 or something like that. And if the law says that, then the judge would have to impose at least a $500 fine. So you can address fine in that way if you want to. Certainly requiring a permit, if you require right now the ordinance requires them to contact the fire department. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say get a permit. So they contact the fire department and let them know. Then, the point in that is that if there happens to be a burn ban, then the fire department can communicate and say, well, you can't burn. There's a burn ban. We've got fire conditions. Or it also tells the fire department, okay, thanks for letting us know, because when they get a call from someone on the other side of the hollow that there's smoke and burning everywhere, they can say, we know about it. There's something burning over there. We were notified. So, but it doesn't require a permit. If you require a permit, you certainly can charge for that permit, set standards for the application, set further restrictions and requirements on how they can burn. And then if they violate, you can either increase their next permit cost. We do that in terms of CDS permits a lot. Or find some way to, I don't know if we can necessarily deny them without having some kind of a hearing, but there are things we can do in the permit area.
But Jason, they do have to have a construction permit. And so maybe not a burn.
Well,
but that
just burn.
Yeah, that construction permit permits them to enter into these agreements with the city that they're going to build according to our rules and our city ordinances.
And
And
before,
they
and I
don't
think-
follow that. The next time they come and ask for a permit, it seems to me the city is in fine position to tell them, no can do. You
Well,
didn't,
because they have to have received, yes, there's a way to do it. But we're gonna have to establish, there has to be a due process. So in order for us to come in and say, no, you violated it before, and therefore you're gonna pay twice as much, they have to have had some sort of a legal proceeding by which they could show they didn't violate it. I mean, we have to provide them constitutional due process, in other words.
Yeah.
And there's mechanisms for that, and I'm not saying that's the only way, but those considerations would be in place with that sort of structure.
so for a second offense, perhaps a second, I don't know what you call it, but a guilty finding.
Right, we could,
and
if a judge had determined, we could set a permit fee that says its permit is X, but if the permitter or the permittee has a prior offense of unlawful burning in the city of Bella Vista, then it's this. That way we know, the judge determined or they pleaded guilty to a prior offense, then we're covered on the due process.
All right, gotcha.
Look, I'm sorry. Like I said, I think it's an issue that's appropriate and needs to be addressed. Burning, I don't think most people really enjoy it, whenever that takes place. It is for a limited amount of time though, typically, right? You're talking a day, a couple days, 3, maybe like at the most. So it's a limited amount of time. I don't know if I could support like a total ban. I think that's probably going a little maybe too far in Bella Vista, considering, the forest that we live in. And I don't know if it's really feasible for people to haul off all these logs or not. And where are you going to take them anyway? Hey, that could be an answer to our building problem here, maybe. I don't know. But so, we saw the Bentonville ordinance. I guess where I'd like to go with this at this point is because right now it's just kind of a lot of conversation, a lot of banter, whatever, is write an ordinance. What would you like to see? Put something before me, something to look at, something that I can consider, to vote on, right? Or, put it in black and white, give me something to say yes or no to, or to amend so that we can kind of move down the road on this a little bit, because we're kind of really not really getting anywhere with it, right now. But I'm all for stricter observation,
Enforcement.
permits, fines, and really getting strict and really making people, pay for ignoring, the ordinances that we have out there right now. I'm all for it. All I'm asking for, like at this point, let's put something on paper. Let's get something to consider.
Okay, there's 3 of you that want to talk. So before I get there, Wayne sent out something today, which is an ordinance that was passed in 2015. I would ask that you have a look at it, please. Section 10-38. It'll be a good head start for you. It talks about, they have to call dispatch. There's no open burning after sunset. There has to be a water source, et cetera, et cetera. They can't open burn if it's going to cause unreasonable encroachment of smoke or heat into neighboring properties. So we've got something to start with that I think we could add on to. Okay, 3 of you wanted to talk in the order. Larry, you're first.
I guess relative to what you just spoke about, Mayor, March 2nd, Jason sent out an email about the burn thing, and it recites some of the things that are in that section 1038. I think I like Jerry's dissertation about Bentonville and what they do. I think I would get with Chief Sims and see if that's workable here. I think we need to tighten up the process a great deal, put some boundaries on it, set some standards, and set some high fees to start with. I like Jason's idea that the fine, first offense, not less than so many dollars, up to so many, second offense, so and so. And then Steve Bork brought in the idea that if they have an offense, then it might be more difficult for them to get the second permit or third permit for their buildings here. So I think if we tighten up those permits a lot, tighten up the program a lot, I think we can get our arms around it and control this thing without having to prohibit it.
Okay, thank you. Speaker number 2 is Jerry.
Jason, could Steve Sims and I guess Steve Burke, if we invite the media, could we all get together and put together what we would like to see in that ordinance so that we could have something just to present to the council?
Sure,
Yes.
if you and Steve want to do it together, we just need to send out a press notice. I don't know that any of them would show up, but it would have to be available to be open to the public, but absolutely, I'll be able to help in whatever way.
Okay.
And Jerry, I just had a sidebar conversation with Chief, and Chief Sims has agreed to run with it.
Okay.
Okay,
So Chief Sims is going to run with it. You're going to put it together or what? Or
We can meet if he wants to meet. We can.
no, what, he could do that, but if you'd like to meet, he's more than happy to set up the meeting.
okay. Steve Burke, I think that would be most appropriate, wouldn't you?
Steve, you're speaker number 3, so go for it.
Okay, yeah, I'm game to do that.
Okay,
So we
Steve,
just know-
I thought we needed to have this more general, broader conversation, and I appreciate Doug's points. We're not driving forward. We're kind of feeling everybody out, getting
Right.
everybody's input on who's concerned about this, who has no concern. And so I think we have enough of that we can kind of buckle down, put something in writing that we'll do the best we can to address the problem so that we don't have repeat occurrences. And I think some of it is we're asking for continued enforcement. And, once upon a time, probably it was really important for us to kind of nurture the relationship with the builders, and it still is today. But right now, we got a lot of people rushing at us to build homes in Bella Vista. We've had a virtual in building of homes here. And it's really important now, with that many homes being built, that our builders are following the city's ordinances. And we just want to make sure we have adequate penalties in place that will deter people from burning when they're not supposed to, from doing overnight burns, because those are illegal. Unattended burns are illegal. Burning after dark is illegal. And we ought to hold builders accountable when they violate those ordinances.
Okay, so we're in agreement then that Mr. Kelly, Chief Sims, council members Snow and Burke will be the point people to run on this. Everybody happy with that? Okay.
Yes.
That's what we'll do. Jerry, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, that was the last discussion item that I have. Does anybody want to bring anything else to council before we adjourn?
Very quickly, I have some information on leaf collection trucks or systems that I can send out to the council and to you and to probably to the street department, who all needs to see the apparatus that are available, but and see if anybody is interested in looking at that situation.
Okay, please remember, we've got 550 miles of road, and they would have to go up each road twice to, if they're going to suck it up on each side. Remember the ornamental rock that we've talked about before. There's a lot of things to consider. And again, streets won't fall into the category for our friends at Tischler Bice. So we'll be on the hook to fund anything that you feel that you want to purchase. But Jerry, yes, please. Jerry, send it out. And if you want to send it to me as well, and I'll send it up to Mike.
Okay. What about the CARES Act funds?
That's what I mean. There's money sitting there, absolutely. But it's part of our capital planning. We need to be sure that we just don't go air 'em, scare 'em, and spend it all.
I understand.
Might be better if you sent it to me and I send it out to the council
Oh, okay.
instead of them commuting it with each other.
Okay. Wayne has actually come up with a good idea.
If you send it to me, Jerry, and I'll send it out to the council.
Yeah, and that way we avoid any FOIA thing.
Okay,
Okay,
you got it.
super. Anything else, folks? All righty, I think we still have a nice evening ahead of us. I hope you can get outside and enjoy it. If I get any more of those terrible look out, here comes a storm thing, I'll be sure to send it along. But hopefully it'll all dissipate and go somewhere else. Again, my
Good deal.
thanks, and we'll see you next Monday. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.